Hi guys, and welcome back to the Crochet Tour YouTube channel. In today's video I'm bringing you another new crochet tutorial, and this time it's from Chainsaw Man. So I'm not gonna lie, I haven't actually watched the anime myself yet, but it is on my list to do so. But I got a request from Jenny on Facebook to make the little dog character, which is called Pochita. So this is what he looks like. And as you can see, the idea is that he's, like a little chainsaw. So I just thought this was a really cute character, and obviously I don't have any Chainsaw Man on my channel yet, so I thought this was a good opportunity to add something new to my channel. And yeah, that's why I decided to make this, and obviously I'll watch the anime and I'll let you know if I like it, but it looks like it's got really good reviews, so I'm really excited to watch it. But I'm just finishing a few other series first. But yeah, if you're interested in finding out how to make this, then do keep watching. One thing to note about this tutorial is that I have used a stiffening agent to keep the saw parts sticking up like this, so I'll go into more detail and explain what I used and alternatives you can use in the next part of the video, which will be talking about the materials required. But I just wanted to mention that because it's a slightly unusual thing. I wouldn't normally include that in my tutorials, but it was kind of required for this. Other than that, it's just your standard yarn and embroidery thread really that you're going to be needing to actually crochet the pieces. So yeah, without further ado, let's find out what you'll be needing for this tutorial. For this tutorial you'll be needing aran weight yarn in the following colours: orange for the main body and legs, light grey for the saw, dark grey also for the saw, black, this is for the handles and also the eyes and also a bit of the tail as well, and then white, this is just for the eyes. Then I've got some black embroidery thread for the mouth. You could just use black yarn, but I wanted a thinner line for the mouth, so that's why I've used embroidery thread. Then you'll be needing your crochet hook. I've got a 4mm crochet hook to go with my aran weight yarn, but if you're using a heavier or lighter weight of yarn, then size up or down as required. You'll be needing your yarn needle for sewing everything together. You'll probably want some pins for this tutorial because there are quite a few bits to be sewing down, so I'd recommend getting some of these so that you can pin things in place while you're sewing them down. Then you'll need some stuffing. You'll need more than this, but this is just to demonstrate. You'll need your scissors, and then finally the slightly unusual item that you may or may not want is some starching solution or fabric stiffener or whatever you want to call it. So this is going to be used for keeping the saw piece in an upright position, otherwise you might find that it flops around a little bit, or at least that's what I found anyway with the yarn that I'm using, which is Paintbox Simply Aran, which is an acrylic yarn. So yeah, you may want to buy some of this pre-made solution if you're lazy like me. Otherwise you can look up on YouTube how to make it. I think it's fairly simple to make your own as well, and I've just got a paintbrush to apply this. Again, you could use any brush, and you probably want a smaller one than this, but this is all I had, so I'm just going to work with that. Now if you don't fancy using a starching solution, there's a few other things that you could do. You could just try and find some yarn that's a bit stiffer. So sometimes I find that more cotton based yarns can be a little bit stiffer and hold their shape a bit better, so that might be a solution that wouldn't involve you doing anything other than just slightly changing the yarn that you're using. Other than that, you could also use some craft wire and sort of weave that through your work as well, and that might work. I'm not a massive fan of working with wire, so that's why I have opted for this, but you can just do whatever you want, or you could just leave it. If you're happy enough for it to flop around a little bit, then it does still stay somewhat upright, or at least mine did, just through not using any particular method to aid in that. So yeah, that's all completely up to you, but otherwise let's get straight into the tutorial. We're going to start off by crocheting the head / body, which is all just crocheted as one piece. So you're going to start off with your orange yarn, and you're going to do 6 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's round 1. Then for round 2, you're just going to increase all the way around, so that'll get you up to 12 single crochets at the end of the round. Okay, so at the end of round 2 you should have 12 single crochets all the way around. I'm just going to talk you through the next few rounds because they're just standard increase rounds in increments of 6 and then some rounds of single crocheting all the way around. So for round 3 you're going to do single crochet increase and repeat 5 more times to get you up to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 4, 2 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 24. Round 5, 3 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 30. Round 6, single crochet all the way around. Round 7, 4 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 36. Round 8, single crochet all the way around. Round 9, 5 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 42. Rounds 10 to 15, single crochet all the way around. Then when you're ready to start round 16, I'll meet you at that point as we're going to do some decreases, so I'll show you how to do that. I'm about to start round 16 now, and as I mentioned we're going to be doing some decreases in this round, so I'm going to start off by doing 11 single crochets, and I'm just going to mark the first single crochet so I don't lose track of where the round started. I'm just using an offcut of yarn for this, so I'm going to do my 11 single crochets. Then I'm going to do my first decrease. So just like that. Then I'm going to do 7 single crochets. Then another decrease. Then another 7 single crochets. Then another decrease. Then finally I'm going to do another 11 single crochets to get me back to where I started. Okay, so that's the end of round 16. You should have 39 single crochets now. And one thing that you can do, this, you don't absolutely need to do this, but if you want to, you can go back and try and find that second decrease that you did. So if you want to see how to find the decreases, you can kind of see that that is just a normal single crochet, but those bulkier stitches, so this one here for example, that's the first decrease that we did. So then you can sort of move along and try and find the second one. So this is the second decrease that we did, and I'm just going to put a stitch marker, in this stitch. And the reason for this is it will help me with placing the legs and things later on, because I know that where I did that middle decrease, the second decrease, is where I want the bottom of the body to be. So this is kind of the positioning that I want. I want this to be the top and this to be the bottom. So yeah, I'm just placing that there to kind of help me later on. Obviously you can just find those decreases still once you've finished crocheting the body anyway, but it just makes them a little bit easier to identify if you just place a stitch marker there to help you. So yeah, that's the end of round 16. So now for round 17 to 20, you're just going to single crochet all the way around. So I'll meet you when you're ready to start round 21. So now for round 21, we're going to do some more decreases. So we're going to start off by doing 11 single crochets. And again, I'm just going to mark the first one. Then we're going to do a decrease. then 6 single crochets, then another decrease, then 6 single crochets, then another decrease, then 10 single crochets to finish. Okay, so that's the end of round 21. You should have 36 single crochets all the way around now. And I still have this stitch marker. I'm going to keep this in until I get to the point where I'm going to sew the legs on. So just if you've also marked that decrease, just keep that stitch marker in for the time being. I'm just going to talk you through the remaining rounds now until we need to add our stuffing. So for rounds 22 to 24, you're just going to single crochet all the way around. Round 25, 4 single crochet decrease, repeat 5 more times to get you down to 30 single crochets. Round 26, 3 single crochet decrease, repeat 5 more times to get you down to 24 single crochets. Then round 27, 2 single crochet decrease, repeat 5 more times to get you down to 18 single crochets. So I'll meet you when you finish round 27, as we'll then need to add our stuffing, and then there's just a couple more rounds left to do. So this is what it's looking like now that I've finished round 27. So I've added my stuffing at this point. You're going to want to do the same. Make sure you stuff fairly firmly, but don't add too much such that you could see the stuffing through the little gaps. You want it to not be visible as much as possible. So once you've done the stuffing, there's then just 2 more rounds left to do. So for round 28, you're going to do single crochet decrease and repeat 5 more times to get you down to 12 single crochets. Then for round 29, decrease all the way around to get you down to 6. So I'll meet you at the end of round 29 and show you how to close up the remaining hole. I finished round 29, so now I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail. Then I'm just going to grab my yarn needle, close up this remaining hole. So you want to just weave your yarn through the front loop of each of the final 6 stitches. Just pull as you do so. And then pull fairly tightly at the end and you should see that hole close up. Then you can just weave that yarn tail through the body. Gently pull on it, don't pull too tight, otherwise you might accidentally misshape the back. And then you can just cut that. So this is what we end up with. So this is going to be the front, this is going to be where the head's going to be and the face and everything, and then this is going to be the back, because obviously this is the slightly more messier side, and then where the stitch marker is going to be the bottom, and then this part here without the stitch marker is going to be the top. So that's the main head / body completed. Now what we're going to move on to is making the top handle. So you're going to need your black yarn for this. So for the top handle, we're going to start by making a foundation chain, then single crocheting around this, and then continuing in rounds from there. When you're starting your foundation chain, just make sure that you leave a quite long tail, because you're going to want that for sewing later, and it's always better to leave a bit too much than too little, so I'm going to leave about this much. So I'm going to start off by chaining 8. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to single crochet around the chain, so starting from that first chain that you did. And you actually don't want to single crochet over the tail this time. Normally I would suggest it, but because we're going to need that for sewing later, I would recommend just leaving it there. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that's round 1 complete. You should have 8 single crochets all the way around, and you should have your tail that you left at the beginning as well, which you can kind of weave through so that that doesn't get in the way. So now for rounds 2 to 5, you're simply going to single crochet all the way around, so 8 single crochets in each round, and then I'll meet you when you finish round 5, as we're then going to start to make the corner of the handle, which is where we need to start working in rows. So this is what it looks like once I've finished round 5. So you've kind of just got like a tube shape here. So now we're going to be working in rows to create the corner, the first corner. So to do this, we're going to start by turning, and we're going to work 4 single crochets for row 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to turn our work again, and we're going to work 3 single crochets for row 2. So you're going to single crochet in the first 3 stitches and then just ignore the final one like that. So we're ignoring this single crochet here. Then you're going to turn your work once more, and for row 3 you're going to do 2 single crochets. So once again, just ignore that final single crochet. This one here, we're going to ignore that, and I'm really sorry, I know it can be quite hard to see on black yarn, but hopefully you can kind of see what I've done there. We've just done row 1 4 single crochets, row 2 3 single crochets, and then row 3 2 single crochets. So now what we're going to do is go back to working in rounds. So for round 6 you're going to turn your work, and then you're going to work 2 single crochets, which will be into row 3 that we just did there, and I'm going to mark the first stitch as well, because I think it's quite important in this round that you don't forget where you started, because it can be a little bit confusing. So that's the first single crochet, then this next one is going to be the second single crochet, like that. Then we're going to work 1 single crochet into the unworked single crochet from row 1. So hopefully you'll be able to see it, but it's just this stitch here, so it should be the sort of next one that you can see after the one that you've just done. Obviously it will be stepped down a little bit, but that's the whole point. This is how we end up with creating the sort of corner effect. So that's that single crochet done. Now what we're going to do is work 4 single crochets into the unworked 4 single crochets from round 5. So you should be able to see here, this single crochet here has been worked into with this stitch above it. So we're going to skip that one, and we're going to start from this one here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we're nearly done. There's just one more single crochet that we need to do, and that will be into the unworked single crochet from row 2. So hopefully again you should be able to see that, but that's just here. So I'm just going to single crochet into there, and that is round 6 completed. So now for the start of round 7 you'll start in this single crochet up here that we marked. So for round 7 to 13 you're simply going to single crochet all the way around. I'm going to do round 7 with you now just to show you what it looks like, to sort of prove to you that we've created the corner by doing this, because I know again it's a little bit strange doing rows and then rounds, but I'm just going to do round 7 and show you what that looks like. So that was the first single crochet. Now we've just got a single crochet all the way around. Okay, so that's round 7 complete, and hopefully you'll be able to see that is going to start coming up like this. So we've created a corner in doing those rows that we just did there. So as I mentioned, rounds 7 to 13, just single crochet all the way around, and then we're going to need to make another corner in pretty much exactly the same way as we just did there. So at the end of round 13, this is what it's looking like. So I have added some stuffing at this point. You're going to want to do the same, as otherwise it's going to get quite tricky to stuff this top bar after this point. But once you finish round 13, the one thing to note is that you won't be in quite the right position to create the corner. We need to be up here to create the corner, not all the way down here. So after the end of round 13, you're going to need to work an extra 6 single crochets. So I'm just going to do that now, and then we're ready to start working in rows. Okay, so after doing those 6 single crochets, we're ready to start our rows. So this is now going to be worked in exactly the same way as we did before. So we're going to turn our work, and for row 4, we're going to work 4 single crochets. For row 5, we're going to turn and work 3 single crochets and miss out the last one. Then for row 6, we're going to turn and work 2 single crochets again, missing out the last one. So that's all the rows. Now we're ready to start in rounds again. So for round 14, we're going to turn, 2 single crochet, and make sure to mark the first one. Then into the unworked single crochet from row 4, then into the unworked 4 single crochets from round 13. Try not to get the stitch marker all mixed up in it. And then finally working into the unworked single crochet from row 5. And that is round 14 complete. So now for rounds 15 to 19, you're going to simply single crochet all the way around in each round, so 8 single crochets per round. I'll meet you at the end of round 19. This is what it looks like at the end of round 19. I've added some extra stuffing, so it's completely stuffed now. Just going to cut my yarn, leaving a tail for sewing at this end as well, because we obviously need to sew down both of these ends. If you notice it looks a little bit uneven in terms of that side looks longer than this side, that is intentional, because those sort of chain stitches that we do at the beginning are quite flimsy and not very good to sew down, so you're probably going to want to sew down just slightly above those into the round above to make sure that it's sewn down securely and it's not going to be loose or anything like that, but we can get into that when we're actually sewing this down. So I think the next step will be to position this on the body, and then we'll sew it down. Now, in terms of sewing the back handle down, you could pin it in place if you want to. Personally, I find it a little bit awkward to work with both sides pinned down at the same time, and what I'm actually preferring to do is just place a pin where I think roughly the centre of the handle should be, so roughly like that, and then I let that kind of guide me as to where I should start sewing down. And also just to say that obviously I've made a prototype of this, and I found that sewing the handles between rounds 14 to 16 looked quite nice. So if we count back here, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I've placed my pin here so that I'm roughly saying, look, I don't want the handles to be sewn any further inwards than that. This is kind of like the limit, the boundary of where I want them to sit. So that's how I prefer to do it, but it's up to you, of course, what you want to do. So then I'm just going to roughly position this how I think it should sit, and then I'm going to start sewing this down on this side, and then I'll look at the other side afterwards. So I think if we start around here, I'm just going to be whip stitching all the way around, and as I mentioned, I'm going to go probably a little bit higher up than the chains so that I'm sewing down a more sturdy part of the handle. Nearly all the way around. Just gonna do one more, I think. Or maybe I might do just one more as well. Okay, so that's what it looks like when that side is sewn down. So now I can just, sorry, let me position this roughly like this, and then I can sew down the other side in exactly the same way that I've done here, except the only difference is obviously this time I can just sew directly into that final round because those are proper single crochets, it's not just chains, so it's going to be nice and secure doing that. So I'm just going to do that now, and then I'll show you what it looks like after that. I've sewn down the other side of the handle now, and this is what it's looking like. So you can just weave those black yarn tails through the handle and then snip them to get rid of them. And also at this point, so we previously placed our stitch marker to kind of help us understand where the bottom of the body should be, so that was what this stitch marker was for. Now that you've sewn down the top handle, you can actually remove that at this point because everything else that you place can be in sort of relation to this handle that we've already sewn down, because now we know this is the front, this is the back, this is the top, and this is the bottom. So I'm personally going to remove mine now, but you can keep it in if you want, but I think it's kind of not needed anymore. So then I'm just going to cut my yarn tails. So now what we need to do is make another handle that's going to go at the back. So it's going to be basically a smaller version of what we've just made here. So let's go through that now. So for the smaller handle, we're once again going to remember to leave a tail at the beginning, and then we're going to chain 6 this time. And then we're just going to single crochet around the chain, again not crocheting over the tail because we're going to need that for sewing later. Okay, so that's the end of round 1. You should have 6 single crochets. Now for rounds 2 to 3, you're simply going to single crochet all the way around, and then we're going to start our corner. So once you've finished round 3, again we're ready to start our rows. Again, it's done in the same way as we did for the bigger handle, except just scaled down slightly. So for row 1, you're going to turn and work 3 single crochets. row 2, turn 2 single crochets, row 3, turn 1 single crochet, and now we're ready to move on to round 4. So for round 4 we're going to turn, work 1 single crochet and make sure to mark it. Then work into the unworked single crochet from row 1, then work into the 3 unworked single crochets from round 3, then finally work into the unworked single crochet from row 2. So that is round number 4 complete. You should have 6 single crochets. I'm now going to talk you through the remaining pattern for the back handle, as having made the top handle and having started you off on this one, I think you should be able to complete it now. So for rounds 5 to 9, you're simply going to single crochet all the way around, so 6 single crochets in each round. Obviously for round 5, your first single crochet should be in this marked stitch here. Then after the end of round 9, you're going to work an extra 4 single crochets just to get you in the right position to start creating the second corner. Then for the second corner, you're just going to repeat exactly the same thing as we did for the first one. So for row 4, you're going to do turn 3 single crochets, row 5, turn 2 single crochets, then row 6, turn 1 single crochet. Then you'll go back to working in rounds. So for round 10, you're going to do turn, single crochet, then single crochet into the unworked single crochet from row 4, 3 single crochets into the unworked 3 single crochets from round 9, and then finally single crochet into the unworked single crochet from row 5 to get you 6 single crochets. Then finally for rounds 11 to 13, so 3 rounds in total, you're just going to single crochet all the way around, so that should be 6 single crochets all the way around. Also just a reminder that once you finish round 9, you are going to want to add your stuffing at that point and then top up at the end of round 13. That's just because it gets a bit difficult to stuff the top bar once we've created both of the corners. So yeah, once you've finished round 13, I will show you how we're going to sew this to the body. So I finished the back handle and this is what it looks like, so the smaller handle. Now we just need to sew this to the back like this. So let's get started with that now. So this time I've just placed a pin where I roughly want the top of the handle to sit, so like this, just so that I can try and get it central with sort of the center of the top handle. And also I don't want the handle to come up too high because we are going to need to add a tail just above it as well to the back of the body, so that's why I've kind of positioned it like this. So once again, you can pin it in place and sew doing that if you want, but I'm just going to hold it with my hands and make a start. So I'm going to start by doing the bottom handle, and I'm just going to be whip stitching all the way around to sew that. So that bottom part is now sewn down, as you can see. So I'm just going to now sew that top handle using that pin as a guide as to where I want it to go, and then that'll be this part sewn down. I've now fully sewn down the handle at the back, so this is what it looks like now. So we've got the top handle and then the back handle like this. So now what we're going to move on to is making the tail, which as I mentioned is going to sit around here. So you're going to need your orange and black yarn again for this. So we're going to start off with our orange yarn. Firstly, we're going to do 3 single crochets in a magic circle for round 1. Then for round 2 we're going to do an increase in the first stitch. And then 2 single crochets. Okay, so at the end of round 2 you should have 4 single crochets, and to get the right shape you can just sort of fold your work over the end of your crochet hook if you want at this point as well, to kind of give you that point at the end. I just trimmed that tail from our magic circle so that it doesn't get in the way. Now I'm just going to talk you through the remaining rounds. So round 3 is single crochet increase to get you up to 6. Round 4, single crochet increase and repeat twice more to get you up to 9 single crochets. Then round 5, single crochet all the way around, so I'll meet you at the end of round 5. So once you finish round 5 you should have something that looks like this. You're just going to cut your yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail for sewing. And now we're going to sew this to the back of the body. I'm going to add my stuffing when I'm halfway through sewing, but you could add it at this point if you want. I just find it can get in the way sometimes, so I'm going to wait to add that. So this time I have pinned the tail down above the back handle, and I'm just going to whip stitch all the way around to sew this down. So and like I mentioned, when I get halfway through I'm going to add a light amount of stuffing. I'm going to sew it in exactly the same way that I did for the handles, so I'll meet you when I've finished that. This is what it looks like when the tail's been sewn down, so I'm just going to weave the remaining yarn tail through and then cut that. Now we're going to need our black yarn again. We're going to need to reattach it at the end of the tail because we're going to make an additional black tail coming off of this. So yeah, grab your black yarn and let's do that now. So I've got my black yarn here. I'm just going to insert my hook into 1 or 2 of the orange loops like this. Then I'm going to attach this black yarn, and we're just going to start chaining. So we're going to chain 30. So I'll meet you when I've done that. Okay, so now that I've chained 30, I'm going to count back down my chain that I've just done and try and find the 15th chain from hook. So 1, 2, 3, and sorry, not including the chain that's on your hook. So starting from this one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this one, and I'm just going to insert my hook and do a slip stitch into this like that, and then I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving a bit of a tail because we're going to need to sort of knot this a little bit and then try and hide it in the chain. So you should have something that looks like this now. We'll also need to deal with this tail as well. So starting off with this little tail here, I'd recommend doing a little knot with this. Something like this, and then you can just weave that tail through the tail. Now I probably should have left a bit of a longer tail here because I'm struggling a bit, but maybe it'll make more sense if I insert my yarn needle first, and then I can thread it like this. And then I can just push that through. There we go. Sorry, I know that wasn't the neatest, but I guess at least that shows you the real struggles of amigurumi. And then you can just cut that. And then push that black bit inside so we don't see it. And now the trickier part to deal with will be this tail here. So for this tail, I'd recommend again doing a couple of knots probably nearby to sort of secure it in place. So there's our first one, and I'm going to do one more probably. And then I would recommend just sort of weaving that tail through the chains a little bit. You could go further, but because I know that I'm literally just going to be displaying this, I probably won't, because it doesn't need to be too secure. Then you're going to cut your yarn, pull on this a little bit like that, and then with any luck that will stay sort of hidden. Now obviously you can see that's already starting to kind of poke out, so you might need to just come back in and weave that yarn tail back through again. Yeah, unfortunately there's not really an exact science to how to deal with this tail. You're just going to have to kind of hide it as best you can, but as you can see, it doesn't look too bad from what we've done there. So that is that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to making the legs. So you're going to need your orange yarn for that. The legs are all made the same, so we're going to need to make 4 of this same pattern. I've obviously already made 3, and I'm going to make the 4th one with you now. So it kind of looks like this. This is the top of the leg that's going to be sewn to the side of the body, and then this is the bottom of the leg, so the foot at the bottom here. So let's get started with one of these. So for round 1, we're going to do 4 single crochets in a magic circle. Then for round 2, we're going to increase all the way around, and that's going to get us up to 8 at the end of round 2. Okay, so at the end of round 2 you should have your 8 single crochets. Now for round 3 we're going to be working in the back loops only, and by that I mean this one here, the one closest to us, is the front loop, and this one here, the one furthest away, is the back loop. So we're only going to be working into the back loops. So for this round we're going to start off by doing 2 single crochets. Then we're going to do 3 increases. And then finally we're going to do 3 single crochets. So at the end of round 3 you should have 11 single crochets. Now we're going to go back to working in both loops. So for round 4 you're just going to single crochet all the way around, so that'll be 11 single crochets. Feel free to use your stitch marker, by the way, but because these are quite small rounds, I find it fairly easy to just keep count of the stitches in my head, so that's what I'm doing. Okay, so that's round 4. Round 5, we're going to start off by doing 2 single crochets. Then we're going to do 3 decreases. Now for these decreases I would recommend doing them in the front loops only, because it just improves the appearance at the end. It will make there be less holes in the leg. You can do it in both loops, but like I say, you'll just have a more visible hole and the stuffing might poke through a little bit more. So I'm just going to be doing these in the front loops. Then you're going to finish off by doing 3 single crochets, and I'm going back to working in both loops now. So at the end of round 5 you should be back down to 8 single crochets. For round 6 to 8 you're simply going to single crochet all the way around, so I'll meet you when you've done that. I've just finished round 8, and if you kind of shape your piece a little bit, you should hopefully be starting to see this foot starting to take shape. At this point you're going to want to add some stuffing to the foot. I wouldn't recommend adding too much stuffing, because like I say, it does poke through a little bit. Even with doing the front loop only decreases, you will see a little bit of the stuffing come through, so I try and keep it fairly light on the stuffing. Might add just a little bit more. That is plenty, I think. So now we're going to move on to round 9. So in round 9 we're going to be doing single crochet increase, and we're going to do that pattern all the way around, so 4 times in total, and that's going to get us up to 12 single crochets at the end of the round. Okay, so that's round 9 complete, and I've got my 12 single crochets. So now for rounds 10 to 11 you're just going to single crochet all the way around. Just finished round 11, there's only a couple more rounds left to do now. So for round 12 we're going to do single crochet decrease all the way around, so that should be 4 times in total, and that's going to get us back down to 8 single crochets. And this time I'm doing the decreases in both stitches, because it doesn't really matter up here, you won't be able to see the stuffing coming through. Okay, so now I'm going to add my stuffing. So you just want to make sure that you shape the foot again the right way. So this is kind of how it's going to sit. So I'm going to add a little bit of stuffing here. Again, keep it really light. You don't want to add, that's definitely enough. That might even be more than enough. You want to keep it especially light at the top here, because we don't want that bit to be too bulky. So I think that's the perfect amount of stuffing. And then I'm just going to finish this off. So for round 13 I'm just going to decrease all the way around, and that's going to get me down to 4 single crochets. Not sure what's happened there. That might just be a slightly prominent stitch. That's fine, I can try and hide that afterwards. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now cut your yarn, leaving a tail for sewing. Pull your yarn tail through, and then we're going to close up that hole at the top like we normally do. So weaving through the front loops of each of those final 4 stitches. Like that. Then you can weave your yarn tail through to wherever you're going to need it for sewing. So obviously we're going to need to be sewing 2 legs to either side, so 2 like this and then 2 on the other side. So yeah, you're just going to have to look at what you've done so far and just see where your yarn tail's coming out for those ones. So you can see I'm just going to bring my yarn tail to match this one at the top here. It doesn't really matter, you can always move where your yarn tail starts, but now I'm ready to sew all of these ones down. So yeah, you're going to want to repeat that so that you have 4 legs in total, and then come back and I'll show you how to sew these to the body. I've pinned down one of the legs and I'm going to start sewing this. Some people like to pin down everything and then sew it all down like that, but I like to pin one thing at a time because otherwise I feel like the other stuff gets in the way. So I've just pinned down this first leg. You want the side of the leg that's sort of closest to the head to be at roughly around 10, and that will kind of get it in the right position, and you want it to be a few single crochets down from the handle, so you can kind of see how that's going to look from the front, and I think that looks good. So you're just going to want to try and position it somewhat like this, and then when you come to do the other leg as well, you just want it to be maybe 3 single crochets away from what you've done at the front, so you can kind of use that as a guide for where you're going to place your back legs. I'm just going to show you me sewing one of the legs, and then I'll go away and do all of the other ones because it will be the same process for all of them. So I'm just going to be basically whip stitching around the top part of the leg. So I'm going to start off by just going into one of the loops from the leg, and then one of the loops of the body, pulling through, and just going to repeat that until I get to the back of the leg. At this point I can probably get rid of that pin. I might actually get rid of that one as well now. Might just do one more. Okay, so that's what it looks like from the front. So we're only sewing down the top part, the rest you can just leave that unsewn. But yeah, I think I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to weave the yarn tail through, and then I can snip that in a second. So yeah, that's how I've sewn down the first leg. So now I'm going to add another one here, and then obviously 2 on the other side, trying to position everything in relation to this leg that I've already sewn down. And I'll meet you when I finish that and show you what it's looking like. So this is what it looks like with the legs now sewn down. as you can see, and then that's what it looks like from the front. So now we're going to move on to making the saw that's going to stick out at this point. So you're going to need your light grey yarn to start with, but you'll also need your dark grey yarn for this as well. So for the saw, we're going to start off by chaining 10 with our light grey yarn. Then what we're going to do is we're going to work 8 single crochets down the chain to start with, starting from the second chain from hook. And you can work into the front loops if you want, but I'm going to work into the back bumps just because I prefer how it looks, but it doesn't make a massive difference. So I'm going to work 8 single crochets. Okay, so that's my 8. Then in this final chain, I'm going to work 3 single crochets. I'm going to start kind of turning my work so that I'm ready to start working on the other side of this foundation chain. So that's my 3 single crochets in that stitch. Then I'm going to work 8 single crochets back down the chain on the other side, which should take me back to where I started. And I am crocheting over this tail on purpose because then I can just cut it at the end. Okay, so that's the end of the first row. We're going to call these rows because we're going to work sort of round, going backwards and forwards like this rather than working round and round and round. So that's row 1 complete, and you should have 19 single crochets in this row. For row 2, we're going to chain 1, turn, work 8 single crochets. Then 3 increases. Then 8 single crochets. Okay, so at the end of row 2 you should have 22 single crochets. At this point I'm just going to pull on this tail here and then cut it to get it out of the way. And now we're ready to start row 3. So for row 3 you're going to chain 1, turn, and this time you're going to work 9 single crochets. Then 4 increases. Then 9 single crochets. Now in this final single crochet, we're going to change colour to dark grey, so grab your dark grey yarn and we're going to pull through in this. So now we're ready to start the final row, row 4, in our dark grey colour. So for row 4 we're going to start by chaining 1 and turning, and we're going to do 2 single crochets, then we're going to do a chain free picot stitch. So if you don't know how to do this, it's quite simple. You're just going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to find the back bump of the first chain that you did. So this here is the back bump that I'm talking about, and then you're just going to slip stitch into that, and that is it. That is all a picot stitch is. So I'll show you that again. We're going to do 2 single crochets, and then our chain free picot. So 1, 2, 3, and a slip stitch. Okay, so you're just going to repeat that pattern another 10 more times. So you should be doing 2 single crochet, chain free picot, and you should be doing that 12 times in total. That should get you down to the other side here, where you'll have 2 single crochets left to do. So I'll meet you at that point. So I've just finished my last picot stitch. Now I'm going to work those final 2 single crochets that I mentioned. And then I'm going to cut my dark grey yarn, leaving enough of a tail for sewing. Then also I'm going to cut my light grey yarn, again leaving a tail for sewing because you want to match the colours. So we're going to sew down these light grey bits with the light grey yarn, and then we're going to sew down the edges with the dark grey yarn. And then I can just cut this tail because that has been secured, so we don't need that anymore. So you should end up with something that looks like this, with 2 tails, 1 of each colour. So now we're ready to sew this to the body. I've roughly pinned down the saw where we want it to sit. So you want to try and make it as central as you can, in sort of relation to the top handle that you've already sewn down, and you want it to not really come any further down than round 4. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. This is round 4, so this is kind of like the maximum where I want it to sort of come down to. But all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to sorry if my hand looks a bit yellow, by the way. I've eaten an orange and it seems to have stained my hand, but I'm just going to start whip stitching like this. I'm just going to do that until I get to the end here. Then I'll just weave my yarn tail through to the other side and also sew down on this side, and then I'll use my dark grey tail to do the edges of the saw as well on both sides. So I'll meet you when I finish that. So this is what it's looking like with the saw sewn down. As you can see, it's not too bad in that the saw does kind of stand up without any wire or starch or anything like that. But if you kind of move it around, you'll see that the saw obviously moves around with it, and I just kind of don't want it to be like that. So that's why I'm going to use some starching solution at the end. You could do it at this point if you want, but because I want to kind of carry on and just finish everything and then do that as the final step, then that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, that's that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to embroider the mouth next. So you're going to need your black embroidery thread for this, or black yarn if that's what you're using. So for the mouth, I'm going to start off by making a black line that comes out underneath the saw, and that's going to go through to the middle, so round 1, the centre of round 1, and then I'm going to come out and make a little smile on either side. So I'm going to try and make this somewhat smiley, as I said. So I'm going to go into the center, kind of like this, and then do another line. Like that. And if you want, and if you have some, you could use a dab of fabric glue as well to kind of keep it in more of a smiling position, but I'm probably not going to bother with that for this. Then I'm just going to try and replicate the same thing on the other side, so I'll meet you when I've done that. So this is what I've ended up with. I think I'm happy with that. I've just woven the embroidery thread up to the top here, and I'm just going to cut that. And another thing as well, just to say, is if you've got stuffing poking through, you can just use some tweezers to get rid of that. So I'll spend a bit of time just getting rid of all of that white stuffing that I can see there. But yeah, once I've finished that, then we need to move on to making the eyes, and that's going to be the final bit of crochet that we're doing here. So now we're going to move on to making the eyes. You're going to need a larger white circle and a smaller black circle for each eye, so we're going to need 2 of each of these. So let's start off with the larger white circles. So you're going to start off by doing 6 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's round 1. Then for round 2 you're going to increase all the way around, and that will get you up to 12 single crochets at the end of the round. So basically exactly the same first 2 rounds that we did for the head slash body. Okay, so that's that. Then you're going to cut your yarn, leaving a tail long enough for sewing. And then to finish this off more neatly, we're going to finish it off with a fake single crochet. So to do that, you're just going to flip your work, skip the next stitch, go into the one after that, pull your yarn tail through, then go back, staying this way round, go back to the final single crochet of round 2 in the closest loop to us currently, and then pull that yarn tail through again. Then if you turn your work back, you can see that you can't really tell where the round ended anymore, which is really good and makes the eye properly circular. Then you can just cut this tail if you've crocheted over it, because it's now secured in place. So that's the white eyes. You're going to need 2 of those. Let's move on to the black bit now. For the black part, we're simply going to do 6 single crochets in a magic circle, and that's going to be it. So cut your yarn, leaving a tail for sewing. And we're going to finish off with a fake single crochet again this time, but we're going to finish off with an additional fake single crochet rather than making a fake single crochet over an existing one. So basically you're going to do all the same things you just did for the white eye, but instead of skipping the next stitch and going into the one after that, you're just going to go straight into the next single crochet. Bring that yarn tail through, then go back to the final single crochet of round 1 in the closest loop to us currently. Pull that yarn tail through, and if you've still got a bit of a hole, as you can see I've got one there, just tug on that other tail again to close that up. And there you can see we've got a perfect circle there. So you're gonna, as I mentioned, need 2 of each of the parts, so 2 black parts and 2 white parts. The next thing we're going to do is sew the black parts to the white parts, then we can sew the whites to the actual head. So I'm going to sew this down so that the black part is slightly off center, so it's not quite in the center of the eye like this, it's more over to the side. I'm just going to be doing a running stitch all the way around. We might as well take advantage of the fact that we've got access to the back of the white part, so we can just go straight back out through there and just sew all the way around. so we're nearly done. There we go, so that's now fully sewn down. So then you can just weave your other yarn tail as well through to the back of the white of the eye, like this. And then you can just knot those two tails off with each other. And then cut, leaving a little bit of a tail, and then we can just kind of hide that inside the eye when we sew that down. Just like that. So once you've done that one, you just need to obviously do the exact same thing on the other eye, and then we're going to sew them down to the body. So I've pinned both of the eyes down, as you can see, and I'm literally just going to be whip stitching all the way around. So like this, I'm going to start off just by going into an orange loop, then back through white and into another orange loop, like this. And I'm just going to do that all the way around for both eyes, so I'll meet you when I finish that. So this is what it's looking like once I've sewn the eyes down. So if you're not doing anything further on the saw, then you can kind of finish the video here and you've got your final product. But if you are going to be using some stiffening solution on the saw, then I'm going to show you me doing that next. So let's move on to that now. So I've got a little bit of water here. I'm going to add some of my stiffening agent. I tried doing it without diluting it on the first one and it did leave some residue, so this time I am going to mix it with a bit of water. Just going to keep mixing that until it's fully mixed in. So now that I've diluted this, I'm going to start applying it. I'm going to do one side at a time, so I'm going to start with this side, let it dry, and then I'll do the other side later on or tomorrow, whenever it's sort of dried enough. So I'm just going to start applying that, and it will look a bit scary when you apply it, but it will dry and you shouldn't be able to see the white residue. So just applying that. Mainly to the middle bit, don't really need to worry too much about the edges. Just a little bit at the bottom as well. That should be enough for that side. So now what I'm going to do is just ensure that this is kind of in the position that I want it to dry in, like this. And what you could even do as well is you could put something underneath it to kind of prop it up. So I'm just looking around to see what I can use. I could even just use this bottle actually. Kind of keep it upright like that. So I'm just going to leave that alone now and let it dry, and then I'll do the other side later. So I let this dry overnight, and I don't know if you can see very well on the camera, but it's dried completely clear, so there's not really any sign at all that I used any of the stiffening agent, and this was the side I applied it to. I didn't actually apply anything to this side, and you can tell now, I don't know, well, maybe you can tell, but it's a lot more stiff and less floppy at the moment. So if I shake it, it does move a little bit, but it pretty much stays in this upright position. So I actually think I'm not going to apply any more stiffening agent on this side. I'm just going to leave it like this because I think this is good enough, and I don't want to apply more and regret it if you know, I preferred how it looked beforehand. So I think I'm just going to stop there. But if yours is still flopping around a little bit, then you might just want to turn it over and apply some more stiffening agent on the other side, and then just leave that again to set for a few hours. But yeah, this is the finished product. So this is what he looks like. I'll show you a better view of it in a second, and that will be the end of the video. Excuse the mess in the background, but this is what the final product looks like. So I think it's really cute and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!